And we are on. I wish everyone could see that really neat countdown that we see.
I actually didn't see it
Oh, you don't see? I'm
today.
the only one that sees
I,
the countdown?
I know I usually do see it, but I didn't see it today.
Well,
So
really exciting watching it
because
count down from
it's really they're really big letters, aren't
Yeah,
they?
exactly,
Yeah, you
exactly.
can see it.
Like it's almost like they expect you to be really blind, so they've got to do it in really
Yes,
big bold letters like that.
exactly. Well, I guess we should say welcome everyone to Everything is Attitude, our Friday night show that we love doing, right? We have a great attitude about doing the show too, Rosemary, right?
Are you
Um,
asking me, or are you just going to keep talking anyway? Are you asking me and let me stop and you're going to stop and let me answer or not?
I guess so. Go ahead, go for it.
No, you carry on. You're doing the
So we
introduction.
have a special guest tonight, Christina, who's been on the show as well. Welcome, Rosemary. Here I will hand it off to you. We talked about handing off to each other, so here I will hand it off to you.
All right. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Yes, welcome to the show. Welcome to Al Pisano, my co-host. And yes, we do have a guest today. And Christina's been on before, and she was extremely well received by all of you. And since the time that she's been on, since the last time, I think it's fair to say, Christine, I'm going to sort of to blow your cover a little bit now because since you were on the last time, you've joined my online classes. Is that right? I can say that, right?
Yes, you can say that.
Well, I just
You did.
anyway. Should have asked you because it is personal and private and confidential. And I just blew it. I blew a cover, but I knew she wouldn't mind. So, um, so, uh, so we're the three of us are quite used to chatting one way or another.
Mhm.
So anyway, all right. So tonight we're going to be discussing the power of the mind. I mean, does the mind really hold any power for us? Can we really use it to our advantage, or are we just kidding ourselves when we think about, when we literally thinking about being able to control what happens in our lives, or a certain amount at least of what happens in our lives, by thinking positively, by literally focusing on an issue or focusing on a problem, sort
Mhm.
of the mind power that we use to hopefully to affect our situation. Does it really work? Can we really use it or not? uh, is it just the power of suggestion, or is there more to it than the power of suggestion? All these questions we shall discuss tonight, but I'm going to hand over to Christina because I'd like you to talk a little bit of Christina.
Mhm.
People who watched you before will know that you were sick, that
Mhm.
you have issues, health issues still.
Mhm.
But I know that you wanted to start off by telling us how I think it was healing that helped you. Can you tell us that story, bearing in mind that we are talking about the power of the mind
Mhm.
versus perhaps the power of suggestion?
Mhm. Yep.
Whatever. Okay, go ahead.
Hopefully. Tell me if I'm wrong.
No, you're not going to be wrong. You say anything you like on this show. We don't care if you're right, wrong. There isn't a right or a wrong here. Go ahead.
All right. So my first experience with healing and positive and power of the mind that I can recall, like where it was really strong, was when I was diagnosed with cancer at 11 and a half ish, back in 1982. And they found I had stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. But by the time they realized what the symptoms were, this is again back in the 80s, it was only a 19% chance of survival. So I had this surgery at a local hospital in Long Island, and I remember vividly, like my parents telling me in an isolation room what was going to happen, that we're going to do our best to get through this. And they had gone home for the night, and a nurse had come into the room, and she was telling me about healing. And that was the first time I've ever, heard somebody about visualization and about healing. And she said that, just focusing on the cancer, and as you go through this, and prayer was a big part of it also. She gave me prayers to say, and just visualizing whatever you felt comfortable visualizing, like basically taking all of the the bad stuff out of your body. So my dad and I started doing it every night, together. We would lay on the bed together, hold hands. I envisioned like little blue fluffy guys, and it was before I even knew blue was a healing color. I just went to blue, and almost like Pac-Man going through my body and just
Yeah.
taking it all out. And so that was my first experience with visualization and healing. And when it comes to the mind, for like 2 weeks, of course, I was freaked out. I was going to die. I'm losing my hair. They tell you on the first visit, you may never have children. Like, it was just a lot for 2 weeks where I was really like freaking out.
And you were only 11 and a half years old.
Exactly. And I was very, very lucky and supportive of like an amazing family unit. So that was super helpful. But, I can't tell you what clicked, but something clicked where, in my head, I was like, I'm not going to die. I'm going to make the best of this. I'm not going to be a patient. And to this day, I'm probably the worst patient ever because I don't like being a patient. Just, saying to myself that I'm going to get through this and I'm going to keep my life as normal as possible, because I did not want to be that sick person. I didn't want to be that weak person. So I, still went to school. I wore a wig. I just took it all as best and as positively as I could. And of course, everybody has moments. So that was where it all started. But because of all the radiation I had as a child, I have a lot of complications as an adult. And actually, it's funny that this is happening today because I just went to a new primary care doctor here, and they ask you your health history. And, I'm listing it. And I bring a pile of papers like this high from New York. And she's like, wow. I'm like, yeah, I didn't know what you needed or didn't need. But, I've had 9 surgeries. I've had organs removed. I've got no spleen, which causes a lot of complications. And there's always something that pops up. But I always go back to that, like you were saying, the power of the mind. Like, something will happen and yes, I'll freak out. I'm human. I just had an irregular MRI 2 weeks ago. Thankfully, it turned out to be nothing, but like, oh, do I have to go through this again? You go to that place because you're human. And then thank you to your class, after I was like a little upset because I got at 10 o'clock at night, I got a notice in the mail that my MRI was irregular and I needed follow-up testing. Now I'm high risk for breast cancer, and this was what it was for. So I got a little upset. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to go into my bubble. I'm going to go into my safe place. I'm going to, if this is what it is and if it becomes something, I'm just going to have to deal with it. So again, I'm human. I have the freak out moments, but I really truly believe with pain, with, with getting better, with healing, like your mindset is so, so important in how you handle it.
Well, and of course, there'll be a lot of people who don't know what the bubble is. They don't know what it means. We're not actually going to tell them too much about it either.
Okay.
But in our classes, I do teach my students to find a safe place and also a place of healing. And I think, when you are struggling, and you are struggling to sort of keep a positive attitude, and it's hard when when you're sick, because you're dealing with the physical side effects as well as the emotional and mental side effects.
Mm-hmm.
It's really very hard to sort of keep that positivity or to keep that strength of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's really good. And of course, tonight, this is going to be part of our recipe, it's really good for us to find a place or to find a mantra or to find something that can, help us.
Mm-hmm.
And we're dealing with, particularly with health issues tonight. Is it possible? Can the mind heal the body? Is it the power of suggestion? I actually don't care if it's the power of suggestion. I mean, I've been a healer now for years, lots and lots of them. And I've been a healer for, so many, more than 40 years, I think. I'm trying to think. Yes, actually, more than 40 years. And I have seen miracles, which doesn't mean that the miracle necessarily is that a person lives when they should have died. The miracle is very often that people who are dying, people who are suffering, find peace and they find harmony within them to be able to deal with what's going on. That in itself is a miracle. But I've also seen the miracles where, you know, people suddenly find this amazing ability to you know, they recover from whatever it is, or they deal with it, and it you know what they say, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. And so I've seen all of these things and often recount stories of these things. And there are people who are, you know, very skeptical, and they say, well, you know, how do you know it's not the power of the mind? And my answer is, sorry, how do you know it's not the power of suggestion? And my answer is, I don't care what it is, as long as it works. So is there a difference between the power of the mind and the power of suggestion? Al, what do you think?
I was thinking back on actually what Christina was talking about when she used to do the meditation and the visualization techniques. And I think one of the more amazing things about the sort of the power of the mind, having that positive attitude about it. I was 9 at the time, Christina, right? So, but I remember vividly hearing what my father and Christina would say about visualizing, and I would lay down with them, or my sister would lay down with them, and I remember envisioning it in a different way, like all like this army attacking the bad cancer. These white blood cells are going after the bad cancer, but her having that mindset changes, or somebody who does have a positive mindset changes the mindset of the people around too, especially kids, and that I think has an exponential effect as well on the ability to heal the soul and be in the right place, and put yourself in the best position to actually heal the physical body if that's what God intends, right? It's about, like you always say, Rosemary, it's about putting your soul in the best place for whatever God intends. But that's what the power of the mind does, in my view. It puts your aura in the right place, it puts your soul in the right place, and it almost optimizes your ability to heal yourself, in my view.
Yeah. And I think it also makes you feel like better. You know, like I think about the time a couple years ago when I had this silly little virus. And I remember when I was hospitalized, and I was septic. It was horrible. Like I've gone through cancer, surgeries. I don't think I've ever been so felt so yucky for so long, that when I had this stupid virus, and it was an impact of having no spleen and being hospitalized for a week, I gained 20 pounds because my body couldn't function well. Like literally, if there was ever a time where my head was going to explode, that challenged me. And at night, I used to turn on guided meditations. I used to think about visualization. I used to just try to keep myself in the best place possible. I would get dressed at the hospital every day. I would put makeup on, just to feel human. And all because I feel like, again, whether it's suggestive or, I truly believe your mindset impacts everything, because you're in this more positive place versus I could have laid there and just and I did, I cried. Don't get me wrong. There were days where I was miserable, but I pushed myself out of it every day. And I think that's where the power of the mind helps. You open the space for healing and just feeling stronger and feeling better, and putting yourself in this positive place versus this negative place, which, I believe negative energy affects you negatively, affects everybody. It just compounds and like a big rolling snowball. So, I just think as positive as you can be is just going to help you. And I think that's all in your mindset. I really do.
I think there are people listening who are going to say, well, I know someone, or my husband or my wife or whoever it is, they were the strongest people ever. They were the most positive people ever, but they still died from this or that or what have you. So we have to be very careful to explain to people that we are not saying that the power of the mind inevitably, if you use it in the right way, inevitably will create a physical cure. But we're talking about the power of the mind affecting our sensitivities, affecting our spiritual awareness. But what about those people who don't believe in God? What do we say to them? Any ideas, Al, on that one?
I hate to say it, but it doesn't matter, right? I mean, if you don't believe it, I do believe in a God force, but it doesn't matter, because I think if you have that positive mindset, it's going to impact your energy and the energy of those around you. Christina and I have experience being positive. Our father passed away 2 years ago, and he was there one moment, and 5 weeks later he was gone. But even that experience, like us being positive, him being positive, it helped his transition. It helped him go to the next place. And versus if my father had a different attitude, we've experienced too people that are miserable through that process. And there are a lot of intangibles. Like some people are in much more pain than others. And my father was lucky to not be in pain in that process. But I think, in our heart of hearts, I think we feel like the power of the mind and our attitude that we have may have manifested in that way. We don't know for sure. We can't say that definitely he was pain-free and comfortable because of that. But it doesn't matter to me if that was the case or not. All I know is we did the best we can to put all of ourselves in the right situation, and the outcome was amazing. Even given that he passed away in 5 weeks, it was amazing because it gave us all the time to say goodbye. He went peacefully. So, could it be just chance that happened? Yes. We don't believe that that's the case, but it affects even when people are passing away, and it's inevitable. I still think it affects us and the people that are passing in a positive way by having that strong and positive mindset. And the inverse is not an option in my view. I don't know Christina's view and your view as well, Rosemary, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, every one of us has to fight negativity at some point or another through our lives. I was actually talking to someone just yesterday about people who live their lives, and so many people do this. They live their lives. They have so many regrets. They live their lives being miserable. They live their lives being unhappy. They live their lives being negative. They very often don't know how to get out of it. It's a cycle that they've begun somewhere or another, and it's habit forming, and they get into this negative state, which makes them unhappy, and it also makes everybody around them happy too. And I've spoken to people in the spirit world, not, thank goodness, too many, but I have spoken to people in the spirit world who have really had major regrets about if only this, or if only I'd done that, if only I would have been nicer or kinder or more positive, if only. And I think that, the power of the mind can affect us positively, but it also can affect us really adversely as well. Because if we positively decide that we're not going to be happy, we are not going to be happy. And the idea for me of actually dying and then having all of those regrets, having to look back on your life, as precious as this life is to us, and it is a gift to us, looking back and realizing how much of our lives we wasted in having that, positive and determined mindset to be miserable, and therefore making everybody else around us miserable. What I feel that healing does, and it doesn't matter how you do it, and lots of people do healing in different ways. Some people do Reiki, some people do, well, there are lots of different ways. We, in my group and in my world, we do a simple laying on of hands. We use visualization techniques, and we use the power of the mind. So when I'm sending somebody healing who may be around the corner, or they may be several countries away, I begin by, first of all, building my own energy and thinking positively and creating an energy around me, an aura or an energy field around me that is only pure, good, healthy healing energy. Because if I don't see to me first as a healer, then how am I going to see to my patients? So you could say I'm being very selfish with myself, because I'm building my energy and making myself, in those moments when I'm sending healing, I'm making myself the most positive and the most powerful and the most healthy and healing I can possibly do, creating this beautiful energy in my aura. Then my next stage is to visualize the patient, and I visualize, and again, does not matter whether he's around the corner sitting next to me or several countries away. It does not matter how close your patient may be, because the mind, with the power of the mind and the energy that is the mind, it can reach beyond any barrier. It can reach beyond the two worlds. If you want to send healing to someone in the spirit world, you want to send love to someone in the spirit world. And this, to me, is what the power of the mind is all about. Sending out that beautiful healing energy that you've got, visualizing your patient, visualizing that patient wrapped in this positive energy, surrounding them with your beautiful energy, which you have created. And it is amazing, because I've had so many of my patients around the world who've emailed me and said, you came to me last night, didn't you? Or you were sitting on my, I woke up and you were sitting on my bed. And well, that's, we travel. The power of the mind. Can you imagine what the power of the mind can actually do? And I remember there was it was actually with the Hopi Indians, they're out in somewhere near the Grand Canyon there, and they were being interviewed. This is a few years ago now. They allowed one of the grandfathers of the tribe to be interviewed by an outsider, by a Westerner. And again, it was a few years ago. And one of the questions this reporter asked the grandfather was, what do you think about the fact that we now can send a man to the moon? We can send a rocket to the moon. What do you think of that? And the grandfather looked at him a little puzzled for a minute and then said, but why would you build a machine to go to the moon when you can go to the moon yourself? And the reporter didn't quite understand it at first. And perhaps there are people listening in who don't quite understand what I mean. But literally, we can use our mind, and by using that mind power, we can project ourselves. We can travel. We can leave our physical body. I know people think I'm crazy, but I've done it many times. And have had these incredible experiences out of my body. I've never actually traveled to the moon, because I've never thought about it, to be honest, until this very second. Maybe that's my next trip.
Rosemary, if what people might be able to relate to is when you're waking up kind of in that twilight sleep and you kind of don't feel like you're there, or you are there. I mean, that's it. Maybe you feel like you've had the sensation of your body floating. Like, those are the things that I think people probably have experienced. Yes.
Yeah, yes, but that's not the same as traveling. That's
Yeah.
not the same as, getting out of your body and traveling. I can remember I was in Egypt many years ago, and I'm not sure if I've recently told this story, but I'll tell it again briefly, because again, it's about the power of the mind. And then Christina, I'd like you to tell me what you think. But I was in Egypt, and I was in a guest bedroom of a friend, and there were two single beds in this room, and curtains were drawn, but there was a street light outside of the window, and the curtains were quite thin, so the street light shone in and gave a little bit of light to the bedroom. And so this particular, it was the day I went into the Great Pyramid at Giza, and I had this incredible experience in that pyramid. And so that night I went to bed, not thinking anything more about it, went to bed, went to sleep, and I woke up and I was standing between the two beds. Now, I'm going to tell you a very personal thing. It is quite often that I get out of bed to go pee. It's not an unusual thing for me to sort of grope out of, get out of bed and sort of grope my way to the bathroom and so on. So anyway, so I wake up and I find myself standing between the two beds. I can see the light shining from the street light through the curtains. I can see all the furniture. I can see, I'm between the two beds. I can see perfectly clearly where I am and what I'm doing. And the only thing I could think, and again, we're talking about the power of the mind here, and I'm thinking to myself, what am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing standing out of bed like this? And I turned, but it was sort of like a weird turn, really. I turned and looked over my shoulder, I think intending to just sort of get back into bed. And I looked over my shoulder, and there I was in bed. My body was in bed, curled up, seemingly fast asleep. And I was me. I was solid. I was me. It was, then this is not a dream at all, I can assure you. And I remember then thinking, and again, the power of the mind, I remember thinking, oh, and very matter of factly, I'm thinking, oh, this must be what it's like to be dead. And with that, I shot off and had an amazing, amazing experience, which I will tell you that story another time. But I'd been to the pyramids. I'd been into the main pyramid, the large one at Giza, and just outside of Cairo. And things happened there, and I was a little bit disappointed. I thought I'd feel more or sense more, because I went right inside and right into the heart of the pyramid. And as I'm coming out, or just before I came out of the pyramid, I was saying to my guide, I was a bit disgruntled to be honest, I said to my guide, well, what was the point of that? And he gave me the power sign, the black power sign. He gave me the power sign and he said, power, it gave you power. And I didn't understand at the time, but what he really meant was it gave me energy. I was absorbing the energy, because when you go right into the heart of the pyramids, there are so many phenomenal healing properties, preserve.
Oh, did she freeze?
He froze.
Up here, I think she's coming back in.
Okay.
I'm here. My head looks as if it's cut off. I don't know if it is cut off.
You're doubled now. Okay, there we go.
Okay, is my head cut off? Because it looks like my head's cut off. But the pyramids are very powerful. They have incredible preservation qualities, which is why the Egyptians used to put the mummies, the bodies, into the center, into the heart of the pyramid. So it sort of gives you power, and then to have that experience later on that night, not looking for it, and certainly not looking for an out-of-body experience. I was exhausted from all the tourist things that you do when you go to a place like that, and I wasn't even thinking of that. But when you think what you can do with your mind and what people do with their mind, I think it's amazing. Mm-hmm. So Christina.
So I haven't traveled, but I have two things that I think are relevant. One is with Al. That time I was in the hospital with this, when I was septic, and everybody thought I got home from the hospital like we're still in a dangerous spot, but I could not stay in the hospital any longer. And I remember Al saying, let's schedule time. He was, he lived miles from me back on Long Island. And we said 9 o'clock, we'll both do healing together. And so and he was going to do healing on me. So I was just going to be receiving it, obviously. I think it was the night I got home from the hospital, right? I think it was the same night. And I'm laying in bed at 9 o'clock. You know, Bill was with me, my husband, and Al was where he was, you know, 4 towns over. And the love and like my eyes just started tearing, like just overwhelmed feeling of this healing and love from far away. And
So you felt the energy.
felt it because I
literally,
wasn't doing anything. I was usually like, I like to heal. I was just receiving and open to it, and like my eyes started tearing. Like I just all these things emotionally that were happening to me, coming from Al, who obviously knows what he's doing, thankfully.
we hope so after all these years.
But then on the opposite spectrum, like I had a friend who had a double mastectomy and thought she was free and clear of breast cancer and ended up having cancer again. And I was back in New York a few months ago to see her, and she knew I did healing on myself with when I had my cancer, and I do still do it. And she asked me to come and heal her. Now I am by no means a professional at this, but I was like, I went to spend time with her, and she just asked me if I could just help her. So I just like literally just pulled all, like you said, pulled all of the positive, the love, held my hands above her. I didn't know if I knew what I was doing, but like at the end, she started crying, and she's like, I've never felt so much love in my life from somebody. And again, nothing special. I'm just pouring it all into her. But, you know, to see her and see how that affected her, did it heal her cancer? But it just made her better. Like it made her in a more positive place. And she was so grateful for that energy that, you know, again, all I did was just pull on the love and just send her good, positive energy. Like, you know, it wasn't like I'm trained in it. I don't know what I'm doing half the time, but I did what I could to give her my love. And then
I think when people come to see a healer, certainly I'm not speaking for any other healers. I'm not speaking for anybody who does it differently than I do, but I certainly teach my students, and I certainly talk to my patients about this. When we give healing, usually it's a laying on of hands, but if that person is in several states or even several countries away, we can do it as I described earlier. But we focus as healers, we focus on healing the soul, on bringing light and clarity and brightness and love to the soul and to the spirit, which is the energy field of the soul. Now, so we don't look at a patient who's got cancer and say, you know, our initial beginnings of healing are not to focus on the tumor and try and reduce it. Of course, as we go along, we do want to do that, but it's all about what God decides, not what we decide. But what we find is, you know, when you're absorbing that love or you're feeling that love, what you're actually feeling is souls touching, energy touching, and you're feeling the love from one soul, literally from one soul to the other soul. And then the aura or the energy field of the soul brightens and lightens, and that permeates throughout the physical body. That lightness, that clarity, that clearness, and that love then literally permeates through. It seeps right into the very heart of every physical pore, of every physical little molecule of the physical body is affected by that. And sometimes that seeping through that beautiful healing energy, that the flowering of the soul or the growth of the soul can actually heal the physical body. That light, that brightness that sort of the body absorbs can actually heal the body. But what it does more than anything else, whether or not it has a physical effect, what it actually does is it heals the spiritual, it heals the soul, it brings peace and it brings harmony. We used to have a whole team of nurses. When I had one of my healing centres, there was a team of nurses, visiting nurses in England. You don't really have the same thing here in the States, but nurses would go out on a regular basis to people who were sick, and particularly people who were critically ill, and they would know. When they walk through the door of a person's house, they could tell. They used to tell me. And the doctors, even some of the doctors would say, as soon as you open the door, you know if this family, if this patient is having healing or not, because the energy is completely different, because there's a calmness and a brightness and a lightness that permeates throughout the whole place, and not just affecting the patient, but also affecting the patient's family as well. Al.
So I actually have a question for Christina. So I think some people kind of play with the idea of having a positive mindset and the power of the mind, and they'll do it sporadically. But you have successfully done it through a lot of things throughout your life. So if you could explain how you personally have persevered and continued to have that mindset through all those things, like what's a strategy that maybe you use that everybody listening may be able to learn from that's helped you personally?
What's the recipe is what he's
Yeah, exactly. What and in turn, what's the recipe? Yeah.
I feel like it's just what's the alternative? Like, having no spleen, knowing I'm going to probably, hopefully not, but probably have health complications my whole life. Yeah, it could depress the crap out of me, and I could be morbid about it. I could think about myself as I get older, like not function, like, but what's the point of that? Like, for me, it's like the outcome in the future is going to be the outcome in the future. The best I can do is just deal with it now, be positive about it, be positive about my life, because I have a good life. And I think it's thinking of like, what's the alternative? To be like this depressive, negative person who just is going to be sad my whole life? No way. Like, that's not me. That's not my personality. And then the other thing I think is, I always think how much worse, there's so many people who are so much worse off than me. Like, I have nothing to complain about. I'm here, I'm living, I've got some crap I have to deal with, but like, I hear stories about people and I'm like, you know what? It's not so bad. Like, it could always be worse. And I don't know if that's a recipe or not, but I think it's just not like the alternative.
Well, I think sort of number one, the one ingredient goes in there is counting your blessings.
Right.
Comparing, like, because and sometimes it's hard because people get in a depressed state, in a depressive state. So it's hard to count your blessings sometimes. But if you're honest about it, I think for every one of us, I was told many years ago, if you think you're really, really suffering and you're really badly off and you feel really, really depressed, listen very carefully, because there's always somebody knocking down below. There's always somebody worse off than you. There's always someone below you or more depressed than you or having it tougher than you, no matter how tough your life is or seems to be. So I think that one of the ingredients is, no matter what, no matter how difficult it is, count your blessings. And another ingredient I would say again is to have a mantra. We've talked about mantras before, and I think mantras are very important, especially in those days when we're struggling. To say your mantra is the hardest thing to do when you are struggling, but it's the most effective when you're struggling. I read something, I think it was yesterday or the day before, and somebody had written, don't look backwards, don't look forwards, look inward. So I would put that down as an ingredient. Take a good look at who you are inside and decide, make a decision as to who you want to be. Do you want to be the person who complains all the time, who moans and groans, who is so negative that absolutely that you're driving other people crazy? Is that the way you want to get attention? Take a look inside of you. Is that the way you want to get attention? You're only getting attention because you've irritated people to the point where they can't stand it any longer, so they give you attention. Or do you want to get attention by being bright, positive? You can cry, it's all right. You can scream and yell, it's all right. And you can let people see that you're in pain, but at the same time, the more pain I'm in, the more I laugh sometimes. I have this weird trigger that I laugh. I can cry and laugh at the same time. But so is that how you want to have people remember you? How do you want people to perceive you to be? Who do you want to be inside? So taking a good look within you and then making a decision to move forward.
Yep.
So counting your blessings, a mantra, looking within you. I think all of those things are, really, really, really positive. And I think this could be the moment when I share the exercise that I've had my students doing. One of many exercises. Please don't think that this is the only thing they've been doing for a month, because it isn't. But I gave my students, how did you do with this, Christina? You know what I'm going to talk about, do you?
The water.
The water, yes, the water.
My water every day. I felt bad. I'm like, I'm not posting anymore.
So basically, you take a nice glass of water in the morning, and it has to be a glass, not plastic, because you need to be able to see through it. And negative thoughts and mean actions and mean words and even mean thoughts, the power of thought, there we have it. They're like little drops of poison, and they poison us as well as poisoning the people around us. Mostly they poison us. So you get yourself this nice glass of water. It doesn't have to be a full glass, but nice clear glass of water. Make sure you cover it, because you're going to leave it somewhere where at night time, before you go to bed, you can't miss it. You can't avoid it. It's staring you in the face. And then so you go through your day, and then at night time you have to review how many times were you mean, how many times were you negative, how many little drops of poison do you think you put into your day, not just the poison that you might have poured out someone else. But when I say the poison, being mean to someone, being irritated with somebody, being irritable, being, just being sassy with someone for no good reason, little tiny drops of poison. All right. So by the end of the day, is your glass clear enough that you can drink it? Or is it so filled with poison that you have to chuck it out? And this is something that everyone can do every day. And if you're struggling with the power of the mind, and if you're struggling with the power to be positive, this is an exercise I'm going to suggest that everybody can do. Because it actually, what it does is it makes you so self-aware. Would you agree with that, Christina?
Yep.
It makes,
Yep.
if you say something or you're irritable, or you immediately sort of think, oh, I did, oh gosh, I did it again, right? Or what was your experience with this?
So for me, like there are times, like with my husband or somebody, like I'll get a little snarky or I'll have a comment. But for me, for the most part, it I don't want to say it was easy, but like I didn't really feel like I had a lot of poison in my water. But I think that's just all part of my.
But that is because you've been working at your positiveness and your positive attitude for all of these years, right?
Right, exactly. Because for me, it's like, I've always believed positive breeds positive, negative breeds negative. Yeah. I always believe.
But we had a few students who got so frustrated and upset because day after day, night after night, they couldn't drink the water because they were looking at it thinking that they'd been mean or been, irritated or what have you. You know how it is, and we take it out on our families mostly.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to suggest everybody out there to try it, because it really makes you on a daily basis. It makes you very, very aware of who you are, how you're being. And it's not about judging yourself harshly. It's about making yourself aware and understanding that perhaps you could be a little nicer, or a little kinder, or a little bit more tolerant.
And also amplifies the need to, on a daily basis, make these decisions, like these little decisions, to either be positive or negative, right? So you go throughout your day and you increase your awareness, and it literally is 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 choices throughout the day on whether to be positive about something that approaches you or not positive, And even if you swing to the negative for a minute, how fast do you shift it around? How fast do you turn it around?
Well, if you're not self-aware, if you're not aware that you're doing it, if you're doing it because it's habit, right?
Right.
And you might just not realize it, but the water, the little exercise with the water reminds you, and it does make you more self-aware. There is, of course, the other thing that happens, and we know it happens, and we all do it. That there's that great song, I can't remember now who sang it, "You Always Hurt the One You Love," that one. And we all do it. We have a bad day at work, we go home, we kick the dog, we throw out the cat, we shout at the kids, we're not very nice to the wife or the spouse or whatever it is. We allow ourselves and because in the workplace we have to go to work, we have to make money. So as much as we would love to shout at our boss, as much as we would love to say to our boss, "You're being a real pig today, you need to stop it and behave yourself," as much as we would like to say those things, of course we can't, can we? Because we'd lose our job, then we'd have no money, and so on and so forth. So we're forever, so many of us, forever battling the work day and trying to get through the pressures of work. And then we leave work, we leave the office, wherever it is we leave, or we come out of the coal mine, and now we can be ourselves, and all of those frustrations and those anxieties and the anger and so on and so forth that we've built up through the day will often spill out, and as soon as we walk through the door we can relax, and that's very often why when people spill it out. And unfortunately those we love the most, who we should nurture the most and be the kindest and the nicest to, are the ones who get it in the neck because we've had a bad day. And the Apache have a saying, Grey Eagle has taught me, that in your own teepee, in other words, in your own house, in your own home, in your own environment, in your own teepee, walk softly and speak gently. And that's not an easy thing to do at all, because for one reason or another, it has become more and more and more acceptable to be mean to those we love. The daughter can, scream at the mother where she'd never dream of screaming at the friend or or somebody else's mother. The son can kick the dog several times because he's in his own home and nobody's going to see him kicking out his frustration and so on. And and it seems to me that it's become more and more acceptable and more the norm that in our own home with our loved ones around us, we seem to have lost the value of respecting and being kindest and nicest to the ones we love the most, as opposed to being kindest and nicest and putting on a big fancy face for everybody out there, and then reverting and taking out our frustrations on those we love the most. So walk softly in your own teepee, walk softly and speak gently. And I think that people should write that out on a big piece of card and pin it up in the house wherever they can, so that when they are frustrated, it's a reminder. It's a big reminder.
Yeah.
There's another thing, and I had a friend of mine would come to my house and assume that she could go into my cupboards and that she could do this and that and so on and so forth. And one day I had to just have a little word with her, and I ended up writing this out on a quite a large piece of paper and putting it inside of my food cupboards, and I pinned it up so that anyone went into the food cupboards, they could see this. And it said, I can't remember the exact words, but it said something like, "It is the host's job or the hostess's job to make their guests feel at home. It is the guest's job to remember that they are not at home. So, so writing thing, and everyone who opened my cupboard would look and think, oh, but then I'm a little anal about my cupboards, you see. I hate people rooting in them, and I have them all lined up in perfect order and so on. But it's the same sort of thing, isn't it? It's respect. It's about respect. So it is the host's job to make the guest feel at home, and it is the guest's responsibility to remember that they are not at home. And their
So that would be
what were you saying?
that would be the power of suggestion versus the power of the mind, correct?
No, that is definitely the power of the mind.
Well, I mean, you wrote it down. It's a suggestion too. No,
No, it isn't. No, it isn't a suggestion. No, I didn't write it as a suggestion. I wrote it as, this is how it is in my house, baby.
Yes.
Yeah.
we have a couple comments that I want to get to as well.
Go for it. Let's have the comments.
As Natasha says, "Good day, guys from the Outback." Francesca says, "Hi, dear Rosemary." Karen,
hold on. Hi,
Yep.
Hi, Francesca and
Natasha. Yep.
And hi, Karen. Yep.
She's with her mom, and hope everybody's having a nice.
Hi, LJ. Hi, my darling. Hope you're doing okay. What do you think to that? It is the host's job. I have to say this to Karen every time she comes. That's actually not true. That's not true. Karen is the best guest ever.
Maggie says hello, Rosemary and Al. Wanda says hi, everyone.
Hi, Wanda.
Lori says, "I did meditation every day as part of my fight too. That and natural remedies and pure stubbornness helped her."
Oh, you know what? That's a good remedy. That's a good recipe.
Yeah.
Stubbornness, right, Christina? Yeah. Stubbornness, yeah? I'm looking at you, right?
But that's the good part of stubbornness, right?
I'm giving you the,
My husband would take all my weights to work because he knew I wouldn't listen to him about recovering. That's the stubbornness in me.
Lori says, "I put myself in God's hands and accepted so many levels of what his decision was. We have to fall completely apart before we can put ourselves back again."
It's very true. That's true.
And I'm glad you said that, Rosemary, because I swear you and Grey Eagle put me into when you were saying that about talking about the astro traveling, and she says she swears that you and Grey Eagle put her to the bed the night she was having a challenging time. Chris mentioned something.
We tucked you in. We tucked you in is what we did.
Chris said something. I guess we'll have to look back. We were saying something, or you were saying something, and all of a sudden you were doubled on screen. She said it was perfect timing. I think you were talking about the pyramids and the power of the pyramids, maybe.
Power of the pyramids.
Yeah.
The power, and that's when you.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, that was interesting.
Your image doubled during that time. Robin says, "I need to be more mindful. Thanks for reminding me. Thanks for reminding me to check myself, although I will still slip up sometimes."
Do try the glass of water. It's a stinky thing to do, but it really works. It's really great.
And that's it. That's all of them. Lori just said, "Yes, you did tuck me in." Yes.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, do we have anything else that we want to say to people out there?
Go ahead.
Sorry. First of all, can the power of the mind bring healing? It says in the Bible, heal yourself, or something such as. I don't believe that it referenced healing yourself necessarily physically, but certainly on a spiritual level. I think we can heal ourselves. Christina, what were you going to say?
Yeah, when you were talking about taking everything home and where you're mean to people at home because of a bad day you've had at work or whatever, that reminded me of one other thing that I don't know if I intentionally practice it, but somebody's obnoxious to me or mean to me or whatever, I always think that it's not me. I mean, there's times I'll trigger it, but it's obviously issues that somebody else has, or if it's a stranger, I don't know what's going on in their life. So I've been way better as I get older of not like letting it affect me. So I don't get that place where I'm getting negative because somebody else is negative. It's not easy, but
So another ingredient is don't take other people's stuff
mhm,
personally.
right. And knowing that it's coming probably from something that they're dealing with.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing to do
It is.
because,
It's
and
hard.
especially for people who are not certain about themselves or they don't have much self-esteem, they get defensive easily,
Mhm.
so they take offense easily, and then before you know it, there are there are wars in the world. But so try not to take things on too personally. Work on that as well.
Right. Because it has to stay more positive.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Al,
Uh,
you wanted to say something?
no, just one last thing. I remember, I don't know, years ago I read something about forcing yourself to smile and how it affects your mood, right? And if you're in a really bad mood or a really down mood, and if you literally force yourself to smile, this article, this research said it's impossible to be sad if you force yourself to smile, and it's
I totally disagree with that, but carry on.
well, the theory is
Yeah.
I think it's rooted in that same kind of thing. Like you're forcing yourself physically to smile, and you're making that little or small decision to be in a positive mindset. And I think that's more where it comes from. Whether it actually works all the time or not, I don't know. But the bottom line is that it is all these little decisions that you can make throughout the day to keep yourself in a positive mindset. And we all fight, going into that negative place. But if you follow sort of the recipe that we've laid out here, I think it'll be helpful, and hopefully people will understand that you do have control, you do have the ability to keep yourself in a positive place. And if nothing else, if you don't believe it affects you healing wise, whatever, like Christina said, what's the alternative? To dwell in misery, to be unhappy? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense in my mind, and I think our minds, right?
Mm-mm. Nope.
I just would like to comment on your person who did the research and so on. I can tell you from my own very personal experiences that smiling does not take away the sadness. It is not impossible to be sad while you're smiling. However, um, I was in an environment, I actually worked in a pub, and I would go there at night times and I would do the lunchtime stuff. I did all the, a lot of the cooking, not all the cooking, a lot of the cooking for the pub. And you're in an environment where you're with the public and you're not going to get very far, and you're not going to be very pleasant to people if you cannot smile. And I remember walking into the pub. I'd been working there for a couple of years, and I walked into the pub this particular night, and I was early, and there was this there were older couple sitting there. And as I walked through the door, the woman said to her husband, "Oh, here she is." And she looked at me. She said, "We were just talking about you." She said, "We've decided," she said, "we've noticed that," because I work behind the bar and I also did the catering stuff. And she said, "We've noticed, we've watched you for a long time." They were regulars at the pub. And she said, "We've noticed that you treat the men exactly the same as you treat the women." Remember, I was young then, and lots of barmaids are flirty with the men and don't give the women so much time. But she said, "We notice you're the same. You're just as nice with the women as you are with the men. And you're always smiling. So we've decided that you must be a really, really happy person." Well, I was always smiling because it was my job. And I would go home in the afternoon after the lunchtime thing or nighttime. I would go home, and there were often times I would walk into the house and I would find myself, I would sit on the stairs and cry because I could not take the smile off of my face. I don't know if anybody's ever had that experience, but you put it on, you plaster it on, and you get on with it. Stubbornness or determination, you might call it. And I can assure you that during that time, it was one of the most miserable times of my life, but nobody would have known it. But what happens is, if you can do that, and yes, I sometimes, my smile would be so stuck on that I would be in tears because I couldn't get it off, and I so wanted to get it off. I so wanted to stop the pretense. But what happens is, if you can grit your teeth and you can smile despite what is going on and how much heartache you're having, at some point, and this happened to me, I was driving in the car one day and I suddenly realized that I was actually smiling and it was real. So sometimes you have to go through the pretense and to force yourself to behave in a certain positive way until all of a sudden then you, hold on, I'm not pretending anymore. You finally do reach that place of being able to smile and being able to be as positive as you want to be. So it's not easy to smile all the time, but grit your teeth and do it no matter what. It's hard. It's and I'm going to end the show by saying, as Al will laugh when I say this, it's easy when it's easy, right, Al?
Yeah.
And it's not so easy when it's hard. But remember, everyone out there, everyone listening, you have the choice. You can be miserable, unhappy, negative, or you could, I think, isn't there the saying, fake it until you make it? So if that's the way you have to do it, fake it until you make it. And I can assure you, if you fake it hard enough and long enough, you will eventually come through. And Christina, I know that there are times when you were in hospital and you faked it till you made it. And when somebody comes through the door and you don't want them to see that you've been crying, or you've been, you put on the smile and you fake it for everybody because you want them to feel that you're getting better or you're feeling okay. And as soon as they disappear, you go back to it again. But faking it till you're making it is sometimes it's the hardest thing to do, but it works. So thank you very much, Christina. Once again, you've been a great guest. We've loved your stories, and you are such an inspiration to us. You really are. And by the way, doing really well as a student. But my this particular class that Christina's in, we just passed the 3-month mark and everybody's doing marvelously. Thank you to my co-host Al Pisano, as usual, a brilliant host, and does all the background work getting us up and getting us running on this, so we appreciate that, Al. And thank you to all of you out there who watch us, who are listening, who are participating. We love having you. We hope you love having us too. And so until we see you again next Friday, we will be here. We're not quite sure what the subject is, so check my Facebook page. You'll see we tell you the day before something. And if you are out there listening and you would like to be a guest, you do not have to be on camera. We can have you on just on a microphone, so we don't necessarily have to see you if you prefer not to, but we're always looking for people to come on. And if you would like to be a guest, you can do one of two things. You can email Al at Alpisano. No, what is it, Al?
You got it.
Info at everything.
Info at everything is attitude.
Info at everything is attitude, or Al at alpisano.com. ALPISANO. Yeah. Or you can email me, Rosemary, at, I'm not going to spell my name for you, Rosemary at rosemaryaltea.com. You can email us if you want to be a guest on this show, or you have a topic that you would love for us to discuss on our Everything is Attitude show. We shall see you again Thursday morning for our YouTube show, which is The Spirit World Sees All. And I shall also be popping in and out. You never know where you're going to find me. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we do all of that media stuff. We're not sure we're doing it very well, but we do try our very best. So thank you for watching. Thank you again, Christina. You were a fantastic guest. Al, thank you very much. And until we see you again. You all know what I'm going to say. Please, please, please have a very, 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 oh, I'll do another one. Very blessed day.